Welcome to the debunk, everyone, and there is salt coming from both sides here, I can guarantee. Even from the Lucy ones. But I'm serious, some Carnage fans, they really make us look bad, you know? Some of them be like, Cletus Cassidy's gonna put his penis up Lucy's assity, and frankly, that's kind of frightening. And the fact that people consider Carnage to be a better waifu than Lucy honestly scares me, but anyways, on to the debunk. And honestly, I like both characters. Both are psychopathic and sadistic, characters. Yeah. Anyways. So, Carnage versus Lucy, what do I have to say about it? They got the result wrong, but I will give them props for all the work they put into it, in terms of animation, and the overall soundtrack. My gosh, this has got to be the best tunes Screw Attack has ever put out. It's so catchy, I'm still listening to it, honestly. And despite how much I may hate the results, I still have to give them credit for their work, regardless. Now, why do I think Carnage would win? Well, before we get into that, let me give you a little background on some of the common misconceptions on Cletus Cassidy. So, the one thing Screw Attack said I noticed that a lot of people have seemed to have been bringing up within the comment section is that Carnage can't infect people via projectiles. So I'm going to get this out of the way first. In Carnage USA, not the one you're seeing right now, this is Carnage Family Feud, but Carnage USA follows up after that. He infects an entire town in multiple ways. Explosions, yes, you heard me right, his weakness actually became one of his greatest strengths in the book. And he would shoot out shards and tendrils and send pieces of himself away, while leaving the main part of himself able to control other people. And he would also send out some of his major symbiote to attack or he can infect people via touch. All of these ways are granted to him via the symbiote. No enhancements were needed for this. And one of the greatest things I would like to note for people who aren't really used to how the Clintar work, the offspring is always stronger than the parent. So Venom's stronger than Spider-Man, even though Spider-Man's not part of the species. But he gains all of Spider-Man's powers because he was on him. How a symbiote works is when the symbiote has a host, and it's had previous hosts before, it could grant the powers of the previous hosts to the present host, even if the host has no powers at all. This is why Venom is able to web swing and everything organically. He doesn't create web projectiles using web fluid like Spider-Man does. Same thing goes for Carnage, as in the race it is passed down from parent to offspring. And like I said earlier, offspring are always going to be stronger than the parent unless they are born prematurely. This is exactly the case with the Life Foundation ones, except the Life Foundation aren't the ones coming into play here. This is Carnage. He's the eldest of them. And therefore, Carnage has had more time to adapt and evolve. That brings me on to my next point. How Carnage can adapt to his opponents. Carnage may not be the sharpest tool in the shed when it comes to other things, but when it comes to killing, my lord, is he merciless. The dude's been constantly shown to enjoy mutilating his opponents, skinning them while hearing them plead for mercy, as well as, just shredding them to bloody pieces. He obviously has quite the lust for murder, and being a guy who's all covered up in blood, it makes sense that he'd love it so much. Anyways, fun fact, him talking about skinning people actually creeped out the Joker and grossed him out in terms of how distasteful it was in his eyes. Joker says he prefers to kill in a more stylistic fashion, and he says that Carnage is no greater than other serial killers like Ted Bundy and such. This of course got him pissed and whatnot, but moving on. Carnage is actually able to camouflage, despite not showing this feature quite often because he normally prefers to take his opponent's head on. Carnage can actually use several tactics if he feels he's in the dire need to do so. How does he do this? Well, like Screw Attack said, he could fly, which gives him extra mobility over Lucy. Actually, they're pretty much tied there. And Carnage can also shapeshift and look like someone else. This isn't just exclusive to the main universe Carnage, Earth 616 Carnage, as the Ultimate Universe Carnage has been shown to do this as well. But unlike Screw Attack, I'm not going to use like 17 different Carnages to justify my point. I'm going to use the main iteration of each character in order to explain why I think Carnage would win. And I honestly think that they just covered the basics of Carnage, which is why he didn't really seem all that powerful compared to Lucy, whereas Lucy, they were able to go more in depth into her origin and her character and what she's able to do. Why is this? Because Carnage has so many, and I mean so many comics throughout the years. It's incredible. Lucy, she had a manga series. She came out after Carnage in the early 2000s, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And she ended much earlier, and she died in the end of it. One of the main reasons I like Carnage personally is because of how hard he is to kill. Even if you ask Marvel, they'll tell you, you can't put this guy down. They actually said it in their Carnage 101 video, so feel free to check that out. I'll put the link in the description. Anyways, Cletus Cassidy once stated in his darkest comic book, in my opinion, Carnage Mind Bomb, that he knows 9 million different ways to kill someone, and he's always thinking of new ways to murder someone. Every day. And not just every day, he thinks about it 24/7. It's really jacked up. Anyways, Carnage's adaptability. This is a common trait of his entire race. Carnage, much like Venom, is able to adapt to face his weaknesses. However, if an offspring is killed at such an early age, then of course it won't have time to adapt as it's a newborn. Take Carnage, for instance, or really any other character that fits his race, and compare it to a human. When you're a newborn baby, you have no immunities to anything. This is why the doctors and nurses recommend that you don't go outside too often, because you can catch a bunch of diseases because you don't have any immunity built up yet. It's the same thing with the Clintar. If they ever come into contact with heat or sound at such an early age, they barely came out, so they could very well die. This is why Carnage tried to kill his son Toxin right when he was being born. He wanted to smother him. Not that it would work, but he tried desperately to kill him, but he was too weak to do so after being pummeled by Venom, Black Cat, Spider-Man, and whatnot. Anyways, he was also distraught, so he wasn't thinking straight either. Not that he ever does, honestly, but you get my point. Anyways. Oh, Screw Attack even said in their Venom vs. Bane video that Venom has been exposed to sound repeatedly and therefore built up quite the resistance to it. It's the same thing with Carnage, except here's the difference between the two. Venom is more vulnerable to sound and electricity than Carnage is. However, Carnage is more vulnerable to intense heat. Now, Lucy fans may be asking, well, if he's more vulnerable to heat, then you'd just be proving Screw Attack's point, right? This is where the adaptability takes place. Venom has become practically immune to sonic weapons because he's been exposed to them repeatedly. Even if we downplay the gene bomb feat that Screw Attack had downplayed, it still would leave me reluctant to believe that a nuke would be able to kill Carnage. Why is this? Carnage has been repeatedly exposed to explosions, and just because one explosion isn't as strong as a nuke doesn't mean he can't build resistance up to it. See, the way their adaptability works isn't that it needs to necessarily equal the amount of force or heat needed to kill the symbiote back then. As long as he takes it little by little, he's going to build up his immunity little by little, and it'll just keep on stacking. Kind of like if you're playing Tetris. His immunity is just going to be getting stronger. Now you might be asking, well, why is this important? Simple. Adaptability is actually Carnage's greatest strength. Not to mention the fact that he is classified as a sadomasochist, which means he's just as sadistic as he is masochistic, which means he enjoys dishing out as much pain as he gives out. Wait, what? Excuse me. I meant he loves dishing out as much pain as he receives. Either way, he's going to be happy with it. When Sentry tore him in half, Cletus Kasady actually thought he was going to die, despite the symbiote actually trying to repair him. Cletus Kasady was actually very eager to die, as he had wondered throughout his entire life what it would be like to die. Now this comes into play as to how his character would be. Here is a common misconception about Kasady. He is an insane lunatic, so therefore, all he thinks about is kill, 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 and no strategy whatsoever. This is false, as Kasady has actually been shown repeatedly to use stealth. Though he doesn't camouflage all that much, he is able to use it. And he has sprouted wings and flown. And like I said earlier about how a Clintar could give the host the powers that it had received from other hosts by replicating them, let's take into account that Carnage once took control of the Silver Surfer and the Scarlet Spider. The Scarlet Spider doesn't really impact anyone much. The Silver Surfer does. Why? Because the Silver Surfer wields the power cosmic. If we used Carnage Cosmic, Lucy would be one-shot. This is why I'm not using Carnage Cosmic. As to why Kasady hasn't used these abilities, well, it could be because either the writers forgot about it, and I will say this is in fact canon. Carnage Cosmic is canon. It's not from another universe. It's not a what-if storyline. It is canon, as it returned to Kasady. However, he hasn't been shown to use it. It could be because the symbiote hasn't told him about it, or because he doesn't really feel like using it, because he prefers to just shred things with his bare hands. Heck, Kasady has displayed being quite intelligent when it comes to killing, as when he was only 6 years old, he attempted to murder his mother quite a bit in different fashions. One time, she was taking a bath, and he figured, well, I'm just going to chuck the TV in there so she could get fried. And he tried to electrocute her. Luckily, she survived. I don't know how, but she did. And she came out and tried to beat Cletus to death. Then, of course, we all know the infamous time he shoved a power drill into his mother's puppy while enjoying the licks it gave him. I don't know. It said this in Family Feud. He's just really jacked up, personally, as a character. And, yeah, he also pushed his grandma down the stairs. That was actually his first murder, when people questioned him about it and told him how awful it must have been to have lost his grandmother at such a young age. He said, yeah, you know, it really was terrible. You want to know why? Because I had to wait till 5 so Mom could get home and cook me dinner. Yeah, that was his main concern. As if his brutality wasn't enough, he of course testified against his father for murdering his mother, because he got his mother to say she loved him. I don't know if she actually meant this or not, but Kasady probably felt sort of responsible for her death. And he could have also envied his dad, as he wanted to be the one to kill her. Who honestly knows what this dude's mind? His feelings on this subject are addressed in Carnage, It's a Wonderful Life, which is a sequel to the image you're seeing here, Carnage Mind Bomb. Carnage, It's a Wonderful Life is a pretty dark storyline within itself, but this is another comic that demonstrates his ability to infect people via projectiles. Now, how does he do this? Throughout the book, it starts off with him sending a little chunk of him through the sewer pipes, and he just goes and follows his psychiatrist throughout the building, and she knows he's there. And the weird thing is, he kind of just pops up in the toilet and says, "Hey, don't you freaking ignore me, woman." And he's just basically stalking her. I don't know. That part was really weird. I'm not the writer here, okay? But then, long story short, they've got him all locked up in a cell specifically designed for him. I don't know why they designed cells for him specifically, because he always breaks out of them anyways and murders people. So they did this, and Cassidy outsmarted them. What he did was, the chunk he had sent, he had also had his main body covered up as well. But when they came, he took it off and just showed himself. But then, when they had started talking to him, a few panels later, he infects them from behind, from what I can recall, with the one he had sent down the pipes. So, he basically gives them a little trip into his mind and how messed up it is, and Carnage Mind Bomb really solidifies that. Go ahead and check it out if you really think Lucy's more disturbing than him, because my gosh, I don't know what these writers were smoking, what these illustrators were smoking, but must have been some pretty heavy stuff, because the imagery in here is just freaking gory. Probably the most terrifying comic I've ever read, you know, that in all of Marvel. Anyways, the imagery, it really gets confusing and disturbing, but nonetheless, this just solidifies how messed up his mind is. However, he isn't as random as he'd like you to believe. In Maximum Carnage, for instance, he actually has an argument with Demo Goblin over whether they should plan out killings or not. Cassidy says, "My philosophy is killing people randomly, because chaos is everything. Life is utterly meaningless, the universe has no center, and its creator is a bumbling idiot." Those were his exact words. And he tries to strangle Demo Goblin over it. However, his girlfriend Shriek tells him that sooner or later he can get Demo Goblin to think like him. So he agrees. He's like, "Okay, now that you put it like that, okay." Anyways, aside from that, multiple writers have taken him on, with some good, some bad. But while he is random, he isn't always random all the time, and he often orchestrates plans without even realizing it. Like in Carnage USA, he actually plotted out how to infect the entire town. I mean, granted, it was a pretty small town compared to, like, New York, but he had consumed an entire slaughterhouse full of meat and had enough mass to take over an entire town. Now, this is another thing I want to explain. Carnage's mass. This ability of his is actually very useful, especially in a fight against Lucy. He is able to alter his mass into whatever he pleases. Weapons, obviously. His favorite being axes and blades in general. Also shoots off his fingers like darts, which he can indeed infect you with if he so chooses. Not to mention, the real seller for me as to why Carnage would win against Lucy is because he has an innate obsession with targeting people's heads. I kid you not, when he was trying to be a hero in the Access storyline, he without even trying to, he didn't know his own strength, so he punched a guy so hard his eyeball came flying out of his socket. And he was like, oh, that happened. Anyway, about Carnage as a character, what really comes into play here is how he acts towards his opponents. He's not going to be all friendly like he was in Access if he's going up against Lucy, trust me, and the inversion storyline already ended, which means he's back to being his sadistic self. Anyways, Cassidy, here's how I imagine it playing out. They see each other. Cassidy tries to kill her because he has an innate fascination with her horns. And no, Cassidy doesn't... Cassidy just has this innate fascination with aiming for unique parts on his enemies. It's really weird, actually, but when he notices unique features on his opponents, he tends to try to destroy those parts first. And seen as Lucy's weakness, or her main weakness that's very easy to take advantage of, is her skull, more specifically her horns. He'll probably try to tear those off. And trust me, he can probably bite them off too, considering that he bit off Wolverine's claws and swallowed them. But there's that too. Let's also mention the fact that Cassidy once became a god, thanks to the Darkhold enchantment. Now, while this is taken away by the god who granted him the power to become a god, Screw Attack has said in their rules that they use characters at their strongest. Not saying that he needs the god form to defeat Lucy, but you see what I'm saying here? Anyways, if you're gonna call me out as a Marvel fanboy or whatever, I actually disagree with Deadpool vs. Deathstroke, and agree with Hulk vs. Doomsday. I actually believe Deathstroke can indeed outsmart Deadpool and use his Carbonadium sword against him. It's just something Deathstroke does. He doesn't even have to know that it stops a healing factor because he's used Batman's own gadgets against him too. Another feat that is consistently shown... No, not another feat, but another weakness that people include for Carnage is that he loves to torture people. Yes, while this is true, he only tortures people once he knows that they have no way of escaping his grasp. Unless it's Venom, because Venom outsmarted him, as Venom is more knowledgeable about the race than Cassidy is. However, Cassidy isn't exactly dumb either when it comes to harnessing his abilities, as he's able to do things Venom can't. One of his most famous contrasts from Venom being that he can form projectiles. Venom has not been able to do that, and Cassidy has been shown to form weapons before. So, there's that too. Anyways, for those of you who are still skeptical as to how Carnage could even hope to survive Lucy's Apoca Fist, which for those of you who don't know is the name of the nuclear fist she used to end him in the video, Venom took on a nuke, as well as Wolverine, right at the epicenter of the explosion, and they walked out like nothing happened. It was a nuclear warhead. They took it and walked out. Cletus has consistently shown at a young age to use his environment around him in order to kill people. And saying that he knows 900 million different ways to kill someone is pretty intense, and his suit only grants him more abilities, which allows him to get craftier kills. I have no problem saying that Carnage could very well outsmart Lucy, and it's only a matter of time before she slips up, and Carnage is to land the killing blow on her. Carnage can mess up as many times as he wants, because he's just going to regenerate. Lucy, on the other hand, she messes up once, he's going to take advantage, and she's going to be dead. How could he kill her? Like I said, he could aim straight for her critical organs and her horns, without even knowing that they're her weakness, basically. But he could also aim, for infection. via his projectiles or his tendrils. This isn't even mentioning the fact that he could shrink his tendrils at the microscopic level and camouflage so that he seems invisible. While Lucy can handle touchdown better than anyone else with her invisible vectors, Carnage, unlike Lucy, doesn't have a limit to how much he can attack someone with his tendrils. What I mean is, Lucy has a limit with how far her vectors can extend. Carnage does not. Now the thing is, he can attack from anywhere. 360 degrees, he can attack from anywhere he chooses. He can erupt from underneath her and impale her. Heck, he can even make mini clones of himself to climb up onto Lucy and infect her. And don't tell me that the vectors are going to be able to sense microscopic organisms like that and take them all out. Because if they try to shred them, they're going to kill Lucy. That's not a good idea. And even then, before you all bring up her reaction time with the bullet, no. That's a common misconception too. Lucy barely survived. She was even surprised that she didn't die. She even said that if I hadn't taken control there sooner, I would have been dead. So don't use that as a feat, because it really doesn't demonstrate how fast she is. It demonstrates how fast her vectors are. Huge difference. Now, for those of you who think I hate Lucy, I don't hate her. I just find her to be a terribly written character in terms of how you can sympathize with her, but that's a story for another day. Is she weak? No. Honestly, I'm going to admit, as much as it pains me, I do think she can beat Carnage in a one-on-one fight in a regular battle. In a death battle, she can't kill him, therefore she can't win. If they are forced to fight to the death, it's only a matter of time before Carnage gets the hang of how she fights, and uses his omnidirectional sense to sense where the vectors are coming from without even having to see them, meaning that he can react to them. Lucy, on the other hand, doesn't have any sense that could detect his microscopic attacks. However, is she weak? No, by no means. She'd probably obliterate Spider-Man easily. Why does Carnage struggle with this, you ask? Because he always gets ganged up on. Spider-Man and Venom have constantly needed help in order to defeat him. They've never been able to take him down single-handedly, one-on-one. Carnage has even beaten them simultaneously by himself. And in Maximum Carnage, he actually tore his way out of a dimension twice. Anyways, Lucy is not weak. She can ignite the air around her if she vibrates at her extreme frequencies. However, her light frequency is actually pretty dangerous as well, as she can actually disrupt your organs, based off of what I've heard from other Lucy fans. So I by no means hate the character. I find her to be pretty cool. It's just Carnage. Even ask Marvel. The whole point of Carnage is that he's a serial killer who can't be killed. People mistake this with Carnage being able to not be stopped. He's not the Juggernaut. No, he's not unstoppable. He's just supposed to be unkillable. There's a huge difference there. And for those of you saying, well, if that's the case, what does Carnage always lose? Okay, here's a misconception. Carnage, his main goal isn't to kill Spider-Man or Venom. Those are just cherries on the top, alright? His main goal is to kill as many people as he can before people can stop him. That's his main goal. And he wins, in the end. He always tops his last kill count. Now that's enough of him until Lucy, as the picture is depicting her and not him. Anyways, Lucy, like Cassidy, can get really sadistic and psychotic with her DNA voice. And she is actually quite the tactician as well. I did not know this, but thanks to other Lucy fans telling me, she can indeed play with her victims and toss corpses out in order to bring out fear so that her victims can panic and not concentrate on avoiding her vectors so that she could kill them. Although she gunned Bando down, based off of what I've heard. I've also read that she sunk the island, which is the very feat that they mentioned, and that her vectors can reach out into space in 20 seconds.
That's pretty freaking impressive, and I saw the stats there. That is impressive. Some Lucy fans were claiming that she was nerfed. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I claim Carnage is nerfed, they claim Lucy is nerfed. Alright? I'm gonna say it's faster than me. The problem is, Carnage has frequently outpaced both Spider-Man and Venom, and since he's an improvement upon Venom, he's Venom 2.0. He's going to be much faster than a bullet. You know, the one that Lucy fans keep bringing up. Which means he can very well infect her without much effort. And for those of you thinking that her vectors are too fast for him to handle, here's what I need to say. He has outpaced Spider-Man, who dodged a bullet. And how fast did he outpace it? At Mach 7,265. It's freaking ridiculous. I'm gonna be honest, I originally thought Lucy was going to win when I knew nothing about her, because I assumed anime people were just gods and goddesses. They seem so freaking unstoppable that it's insane. I mean, have you seen Naruto, Dragon Ball? It's ridiculous. Anyways, little did I know, she is a glass cannon. She can dish out so much damage that she can't take herself. And that's what ultimately leads to her demise in the manga. Now, I will take into account that she was healing her beloved Kuta, pronouncing this wrong, and that contributed to her demise, as well as holding off an entire military fleet, of course, after punching the island. However, what happened here? I am getting info, not just from Lucy fans, I even did my own research. She sunk the island with her vectors when she had a performance-enhancing drug. She does not carry that drug with her all the time. This isn't even mentioning the fact that, well, frankly, Lucy can get a little too sadistic for some people, with her DNA voice taking over, and it's ultimately what tried to push her out into the edge. Now, people claim she's a planet buster. The problem I have with this is she hasn't been shown to actually, destroy the planet. And even if she is a planet buster, Carnage has went up against Sentry and survived. That alone is a feat worth taking note of. And he enjoyed it. He enjoyed being torn in half. Now, while that's different from, being impaled or exploding, take into account that Sentry has the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, and he tore him in half with that amount of force. Not with that amount of heat, but with that amount of force. And Carnage has tanked beams hotter than the sun. He has tanked blasts from Sunfire, Firestar, and Human Torch, as well as Flambeau. He's taken them on various occasions and has adapted to them. Meanwhile, Lucy, her strongest attack being her Apocalypse, while I will remain hesitant to the fact that she can actually, well, I wouldn't really call it a fact, but others are saying it is, that she could just spam the Apocalypse without getting tired. I'm going to assume she can. Give them the benefit of the doubt here, right? Will that kill Carnage? No. Why? Because even if she tries to hold him in place in order to do it, he takes on a malleable form. He's like a liquid. Good luck holding him for long. It's only a matter of time before he escapes, and even tries to climb up the vector. Now, she could, of course, take him off, as shown in the death battle, but Carnage is extremely fast, and like I said, he can attack her from any angle. This isn't even mentioning the fact that he can create other clones the more she cuts him. The more she cuts him, the more carnages she's going to create, and if she creates an explosion, a piece of the symbiote could actually land on her and infect her. So, it really doesn't work out well for her. Now, while it's probably stronger than the freaking RPG thing used, it could still very well work against her. I mean, Carnage has been shown to recover from the gene bomb, which not only attacked his genetic code, yet also disassembled his atoms. And it was designed to vaporize, aka Flash Fry, which not only Sabretooth claimed, But guess what Apocalypse claimed as well? So, as for him not having multiple planetary feats to back up his durability, I wouldn't say that, especially including the fact that Marvel even stated that you can't keep him down for good. So I remain skeptical to that. Now, could Lucy pull out a win? Here are my thoughts. Carnage versus Lucy. How would this turn out? In a regular battle, I do believe Lucy takes it. She could smack him around like a rag doll until she gets bored, or until they both get bored and frustrated with trying to kill each other and they just leave. Kind of like what happened in Deadpool vs. Carnage. Although Deadpool was basically trying to escape. Now, in a death battle, do I think she will win? Heck no. She has no chance in hell at destroying Carnage. And it's only a matter of time before he takes the win.